Welcome back to the False Prophet channel where we get Islam busted on the daily and the prophet of Islam, the false prophet Muhammad, who the Muslims worship as their God, and we can prove that. And anything we say on this channel, we can prove it. We can show and prove it from the Hadiths and the Quran itself. Today's topic, we will be discussing the wannabe ferret by the name of Muslim Warrior, but I like to call him Muslim Cheerleader. You see, the so-called Muslim Warrior, I challenged him to a debate on Skype, which he said he would give me his Skype. He told me to Skype him, and then when I asked for his Skype ID, he reneged on giving me his Skype ID because he is a coward. Even though his name is Muslim Warrior, I like to call him the Muslim Cheerleader because he's just like Farrett. He has a channel where he uploads videos about CP, and what him and Farrett does is they'll take snippets from CP's channel, and what they'll do is they'll try to get CP busted. But the thing is, the reason why I call them cowards is because they never want to call in live and challenge CP live or any Christian apologist because they realize they have too much to lose, okay? Because when it comes to these Muslim channels, the owners of these channels, they don't want to put their credibility on the line, and they don't want to jeopardize their credibility by losing a debate and then end up losing their Muslim subscribers, because this is where they get their charity money from, and this is how they feed themselves, So just like the prophet would charge people for consultations, and I dare any Muslim to say that I'm lying. We have all of the facts to back up everything we say. Muhammad himself would make people pay to have private consultations with him. So we can back all of that up. And today, we will be exposing Muslim Warrior and Farrett. Farrett responds. The Farrett, the rat-looking boy, who CP said he would debate him. CP offered to debate him. Farrett turned it down. He even put a video on his channel where he is encouraging other Muslims to not call in the CP show because he realizes that every time a Muslim calls in, that they end up embarrassing themselves and they end up leaving Islam live on air. So it's making Islam look very bad. So in so many words on that video that Farrett uploaded, he's basically begging his Muslim community that they should not call in to CP because, he knows they're going to get busted. Just like this Muslim Warrior, this Muslim Cheerleader guy, I challenged him to a debate on the topic of, does God enter his creation and what is Allah? Because Muslims have this flawed concept of the universe that God is outside of everything, which makes absolutely no sense. And I'll read a paragraph that I wrote him, and he has of yet given me an answer, because he can't provide an answer because their core doctrine about Allah being separated from everything and not like anything, it makes no sense. And I'm gonna read the paragraph that I wrote him in the comment section because it explains what I'm saying very, very thoroughly, better than me just trying to repeat everything. I'll actually read the comment that I left him. Okay? Never mind the first part. I'm going to get to the part about... Okay. Okay. We'll start right here. Allah is no gender. In fact, no word can be attributed to him because all words were created for usage in a created world. What I meant right there was Muslims in their Quran, they have words that they attribute to Allah. But that doesn't make sense, because if Allah is outside of everything, if he is inconceivable, he's not detectable by your senses, he is inconceivable, he's not detectable, he's incomprehensible to your understanding, he's not like anything in creation. That means there is no word that can be applied to Allah, because all words were created for usage in a universe that is tangible. So the only reason why we have words is because we navigate through the universe based upon the words. We are able to use these words to identify things. We have numbers, and we give a word to a number so we can keep count of things. So we can keep count of records and things of such. So to say that Allah is not like anything, it makes no sense to even call Allah a he, because we know he is a pronoun that was created for usage of a male being. But Allah is no gender, so he is not a male. So therefore, when the Quran refers to Allah as a he, it doesn't make sense. So basically, they're not even talking about Allah. They're not describing him, but yet they are calling him a he. If that's the case, they could have called Allah a she. What difference would it make? Why do the Muslims lean towards calling Allah a he rather than a she? You get what I'm saying? Is Islam sexist? Well, of course it's sexist, because they choose to call their God a he rather than calling him a she. But if he is not a gender, what difference would it make? Why not just call him she? So from now on, I'm going to call Allah a she. So the Muslims worship a she, a female God. And if they want to get upset and mad, why are you getting upset? You don't get upset when you refer to him as a he. So why? And if he is no gender anyway, or if she is no gender anyway, why are you getting upset? Okay? Now, let me finish reading. Allah is no gender. In fact, no word can be attributed to him, because all words were created for usage in a created world. There are no words made for the uncreated realm outside of creation that your Allah lives in. In fact, based on the word definition of exist, your Allah doesn't exist, because anything outside of the electromagnetic field is non-existent, because everything operates off of energy. Everything that exists accesses energy in order for it to even be in existence. So anything outside of the realm of energy does not exist. You Muslims even go so far to say he is not a spirit, referring to Allah, which means Allah by definition is nothing, because only nothing can fit his description, because he is outside of creation and time and space. That's why we have a word called nothing. So Allah by word definition would be nothing. He is nothing. So basically, Muslims are atheists because they don't believe in nothing. Atheists believe in the Big Bang Theory, that matter existed as a form of energy that they call dark matter, okay? But they don't say this dark matter has a creator. They don't believe in God, okay? They just believe in energy, but they don't believe that this energy had a creator, and they don't give you a name for what actually caused the catalyst of the Big Bang explosion. They don't tell you what initiated it. So they are no different than Muslims, because Muslims likewise believe in a force that they don't know what it is, but yet they say, like the atheists, that this force initiated everything. So you can put atheists who believe in the Big Bang Theory in the same category with Muslims, because both of them have no clue about what it was that initiated the environment around us. They have no clue about it. The only difference is the Muslims, they put a spin on it. They put a religious spin upon their question mark, but the atheists don't do that. The only difference is the Muslims, they offer you a religious writing, but they don't offer you what was this catalyst that created everything that you see. They don't know what it is. But we'll continue reading. You Muslims even go so far to say he is not a spirit, which means Allah by definition is nothing, because only nothing can fit his description, because he is outside of creation and time and space. And that doesn't even make sense, because you would also have to prove that there is a such thing as outside of time and space. Okay? Muslims say Allah is outside of time and space, but how can you prove this? First, you will have to quantify that there is even a such thing as outside of time and space. That's why I wrote, show us through a scientific demonstration that there is somewhere outside of time and space. That makes absolutely no sense, because everything is connected to consciousness, and you can't have creation without consciousness to exist. And I'm referring to God's consciousness. So to say God is outside of creation is illogical, because creation came from the consciousness of God. So for anyone, let me finish reading. So how can God be outside of what came forth from his very own consciousness? That concept doesn't even make sense. Creation is rooted in consciousness like a tree is rooted in the ground. The tree can exist without the soil because it sprang forth from the soil. Likewise, creation can't exist without the consciousness of God, because the consciousness of God is the soil which creation itself is rooted in. If you eliminate God's consciousness, then you will have nothing at all to exist. Creation came from the consciousness of God, and we live within the consciousness of God, like the Bible told us way before that stupid Quran was invented. Then I told him to read. Read, Abdul, Acts 17:28, KJV. For in him we live and move and have our being, as certain also of your own poets have said. For we are also his offspring. Like I was saying, the tree came forth from the soil. So we are the offspring of God's consciousness. We came from within his consciousness. So that's what it means by we are also his offspring. So there you have it. Our Bible is right. And it's impossible for God to be outside of creation, because creation itself is rooted in the consciousness of God. I meant to write consciousness right there, but spell check it. I end up putting Constitution. Because creation itself is rooted in the consciousness of God. So if you remove God from creation and place him outside of everything, then what force would hold creation together, since it's dependent on the consciousness of the creator to exist? Now you got to listen to what I'm saying right here. To say God is outside of creation is saying that creation is maintaining its own existence, like the Muslims are saying, which would be turning the creation into a God, because they are saying that creation is separated from God. So therefore, creation is existing and maintaining itself in and of itself, okay? To say God is outside of creation is saying that creation is maintaining its own existence, which would be turning the creation into a God. And to hold to that idea would be saying if God didn't exist, then creation could still exist, because you are saying it's outside of God's consciousness, but yet it's still existing. So to say that would mean we don't need God to exist, because creation has its own consciousness that it exists within. That's what they're saying. If God is separated from creation, he's outside of creation, and creation is not springing forth from his consciousness, that means that creation itself is responsible for maintaining its own existence, absent of existing within the consciousness of the creator. Okay? So to say that would mean we don't need God to exist because creation would then have its own consciousness that it exists within. And that's why Islam is more paganistic, because it views nature as sustaining itself outside of the consciousness of God. That's a pagan belief called animism, which says that this universe, this earth that we live in, is a spirit within its own self. But the Bible says the very opposite, that we live within the consciousness of the creator. So tell me, if God did not exist, could nature exist? Think about that. If the consciousness of God did not exist, could nature exist? No, it couldn't. Why? Because nature comes from where? Where does nature come from, Mr. Muslim warrior? Where does nature spring forth from? Exactly. It came from where? The consciousness of the creator. Okay? So tell me. So since that's the case, the answer is no. And why is that? Because creation came from the consciousness of God. And everything is dependent upon the consciousness of God in order to exist, because we live within his consciousness. But Allah being outside of creation means he does not exist, because all exist within. The outside is an illusion. Even now, Abdul, while you are reading this, it's being processed in your brain. Your eyes are connected to your brain, Abdul. So all images and the rest of your senses are processed within. And likewise, all that God experienced is processed within his consciousness. So to say he is outside of his creation, which is processed within, makes absolutely no sense. And no Muslim has ever been able to challenge me on this. And if you debate me live, I will squash you in front of everybody on this topic. And all for the glory of Yahweh, the supreme ruler, the Alpha and Omega, the original maintainer of that title, before the Allah of the Quran copied what was in our ancient Jewish books. You see, and I ended it with that because they like to say that the Bible is corrupted, but they got to ask themselves this question. If it wasn't for Christianity, how would they know that Waraka was the name, that Jibril was the name of the angel who visited Muhammad in the cave? Although nothing in the cave formally introduced himself to Muhammad as Jibril. So my point is, if it wasn't for Waraka, the cousin of Khadijah, being a Christian who knew about Jibril, what would Muslims be saying today about who it was who came to visit Muhammad in the cave? They would be left with no answer, okay? Because when Muhammad left the cave, he said it his own self. He thought he was demon possessed. He was frightened to the point that he was about to jump off the edge of the cliff. So if it wasn't for Waraka saying Jibril, that was Jibril, who would the Muslims have to identify the person or that demon that came into the cave to visit Muhammad? And why do we say it was a demon? Because an angel from God, when you read the Bible, whenever Jibril would visit someone, he would always say, "Fear not." He would assure that person that he was a benevolent being. But when you read the account of Muhammad, he was frightened. Okay? That demon in that cave was squeezing him, choking him, telling him to read. If this was an angel from the Most High, he would have known that Muhammad couldn't read. And he wouldn't have left Muhammad frightened and fearful. Okay? To the point another man who wasn't even on the scene had to say that this was such and such. This was Jibril. Which makes the Quran itself a weak hadith, because the chain of narration is broken from the very beginning. Out the gate, from the very start of Islam, you do not know who was the first narrator. So Muslims, they like to throw away hadiths that get them busted. They'll say, even Sahih hadiths, I've been noticing recently that Muslims are even rejecting Sahih hadiths. And they'll say it's rejected. And then they'll come with these little technicalities like Farad does. And we're talking about hadiths that have been accepted for the past 1400 years. But now all of a sudden, because Christians have access to all of these Muslim books now because of the internet, and you have people like me who can actually think, unlike these Abduls who just repeat things that they hear in Arabic. Because most of these Muslims, they don't even know how to read Arabic. So they just reciting things. So because now we have access to their books, we know what it says. So now the Muslims are forced to reinterpret Islam. And thanks to us, we making them correct Islam. I mean, so I think we should give ourselves a hand clap, because eventually they're going to leave Islam. The more we start exposing these hadiths and showing the inconsistencies and showing how it's irrational, like the argument I'm telling you now about how can Allah exist outside of creation, which makes absolutely no sense. How can God be outside of creation? It's forcing them to reanalyze everything, something that they never did in 1400 years since the time of Muhammad. Now they are forced to reanalyze everything, and they are even dismissing hadiths that they have held dear to and had no question about until Christians brought it up to them. Like, I'm going to introduce a hadith to you today that they probably never even thought about, but it's going to go along with what I'm saying, and it will help further refute all of their false claims about Allah being all-seeing, omnipotent, and omniscient. But we're going to destroy all of that. So now, let's get back to this character, the Muslim cheerleader. The guy right here, who refused to give me his Skype because he understands what would happen. Because he cannot, and he knows that he cannot, provide evidence of something being outside of creation. Okay? Even when he says Allah is outside of creation, to even make that stupid assertion, he had to say it within creation. And what do I mean by that? What do I mean by that? When these Muslims make that stupid assertion that Allah is outside of creation, that question is even created within their consciousness, which is a part of creation. Consciousness itself is a part of creation. So I ask you, Muslim warrior, could you ask that very question, that Allah is outside of creation, outside of your consciousness? Would that be possible? Would that be possible? Muslim warrior, would that be possible to ask the question of Allah is outside of creation? Would it be possible to say that outside of creation, since consciousness itself is a part of creation? Would it be possible to say that? Did God create his consciousness? Huh, Muslim warrior? Did God create his consciousness, huh, cheerleader? No, he didn't. So what does that mean? Since God didn't create his consciousness, before there was anything far as mountains, moon, sun, what existed? Huh, Muslim cheerleader? What existed? The consciousness of what? God. Therefore, everything came from what? The first thing that existed. The first thing that existed was what, Muslim cheerleader? Boom. Gotcha. The first thing that existed was the consciousness of God himself. So how can anything exist outside of the consciousness of God itself? When the consciousness of God is everywhere. It's everywhere. God's consciousness is omnipotent, which means all-knowing. It's omniscient, which means it's all-wise, all-seeing. And it's omnipresent, meaning it's everywhere. So since God's consciousness is omnipresent, how can there be a such thing of outside of creation and time and space, since his consciousness has no borders to it? Because if you give his consciousness a border or a separation, then what's filling that separation between time and space and outside of time and space? What would be filling that void? Huh, Muslim cheerleader? That void would be what? An empty space of what? Nothingness? What would that void be? And if there is a void between consciousness and outside of time and space, if there is a void between within creation and outside of creation, if Allah is outside of creation, what's in between that area between inside of creation and outside of creation? You get what I'm saying? That makes no sense. And that would mean that God is not omnipresent, because omnipresence covers everything. There would be no void between creation and outside of creation. Omnipresent mean every area, every square inch of infinity is covered, and it's seen by the consciousness of the Creator. So that's why you can't provide me a scientific explanation showing something outside of consciousness and outside of creation. It does not exist. So the Muslim view of their God, it makes no sense. But yet they can accept this view without any question. But these same Muslims who will accept a irrational, illogical viewpoint that God is separated from everything, he's not like anything, he's not inside of creation, he's not outside of time and space, and then saying all of that, having no answer to why everything springs forth from the consciousness of the Creator, without being able to answer that dilemma, they will still hold on to an irrational opinion, and at the same time they will question the Trinity and say that the Trinity is illogical. But yet the very thing that they hold on to, that Allah is outside of creation, there is nothing like him, they are saying that that is making sense. So it just shows their inconsistencies within their arguments, because we can show them examples of the Trinity within nature, but they can't show us any example of something being outside of everything. They can't show that. Even when they raise that idea to us and say that Allah is outside of everything, they are saying that within their consciousness, which is connected to everything and is not outside of everything. So even when they say that, it's still within their consciousness, which means it is impossible for them to prove that. So now we see why the Muslim cheerleader, why he did not want to debate me. I would challenge any Muslim on this very topic that I'm saying right now. They can bring their top, I don't care who it is. It can be Farad, it can be Muhammad Hijab, it can be Zakir Naik, it can be any of them. They can bury up Ahmad Didat, and I'll debate him. I'll debate his dead ass on this topic that I'm saying. You see, and he died challenging God. He was silenced. He was in a debate, getting on Ahmad Didat for a second. He was in a debate with a Palestinian Christian, and he said that if he was lying, that God, that Yahweh will silence him. And guess what? Guess how Ahmad Didat died? He was silenced. He died on his deathbed, unable to speak, because he challenged the God of the worlds, Yahweh. Just like this Muslim warrior has the audacity to do, but he can't even prove his viewpoint. You see, these Muslims, they can't prove anything. He can't show you how Allah can be like nothing, but yet you can use words that was created for a tangible universe and apply it to something that's intangible. He can't tell you the reason why. But you know why he believe it? Because he's just an Abdul. He's just a little ignorant Abdul. You know, he's been raised all of his life to believe that marching around a shoebox and rubbing a black stone will erase your sins. He don't ask why this is possible. He just believes it because his silly prophet, his child molesting prophet, believed it. So they believe anything that Muhammad said. Okay? Now, it's something I wanted to show you. We about to get them busted. We about to get these Abduls busted. Come on, we about to get these Abduls busted. We about to get them busted. Let's go to Sunnah.com. Let me show you something. Let me show you something. Let's show this Abdul 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 something. Read before you. It was narrated from Abu Hurairah that the Prophet said, Allah will not look at a man who has intercourse with his wife in her buttocks. But I thought Allah is all seeing. You see this? Look at the grade. Grade Sahih. The Prophet said, Allah will not look at a man who has intercourse with his wife in her buttocks. Anal sex. He won't look at that person. Looking is what? It's a sense that's connected to what? Eyesight. So if Allah will not look at a man who has intercourse with his wife in her buttocks, what does that mean? That means that Allah is not all seeing. Boom, Abdul. We got you busted again. So you can no longer say that your Allah is all seeing. Got you busted again. You can no longer say that. Because if he don't look at a man who commits anal sex, guess what? That means it's millions of people who Allah is not looking at because they committing anal sex. Millions of people have done that. Millions of Muslims have done that. In their homes, they're not going to tell you they did it. So that means Allah, it's a lot of people that he's not looking at. This is literal. So they'll try to, no, this is not a metaphor. This is literal. Allah will not look at a man who has intercourse with his wife in her buttock. He will not look at a man who does that. So they can no longer say that their God is all seeing. They can no longer say that. So we just getting these Muslims busted every day, man. And this guy right here, he will never challenge me on what is Allah. See, these Muslims, Islam is the only religion where the followers do not know what it is that they are worshiping. They don't even know what they are worshiping. You see this Abdul in front of you? He don't even know what he's worshiping. He don't know, but yet he's following it. He can't tell you, he can't give you a rational reason, a logical answer to how his God is separated from everything and not like anything. And creation is totally far away from him. Its creation is over there. He's somewhere else. And he doesn't exist inside of his creation. When we have showed and proved that that is impossible. Now, we'll leave him with this final question. Abdul, answer this. When your Allah is looking at everything, where is he seeing everything at? Since he is consciousness, right? Where is he seeing everything? Is he seeing it within his consciousness? Since he's outside of creation, so how is he processing images? Where does he process images at? Are they processed outside of his consciousness? How does that make sense? Like, when you're hearing this, my voice right now, where is it being processed at? Where are these sounds and the understanding being processed at? Within your consciousness, right? And your brain is the instrument that's allowing you to understand taste, touch, hear, see, and smell. Without a brain and without a pineal gland, you don't exist, because everything is connected to consciousness in this world via your pineal gland. Okay? So answer me this question, Abdul. Muslim warrior. Jihad. Allahu Akbar. Takbir. Allahu Akbar. Takbir. Allahu Akbar. Answer this question, Takbir. Where does Allah process images at? Since creation is outside of him, where does he process images when he's looking at things? And before there were mountains, a moon, a sun, and stars, before all of that, when those things came about, where did they rise up at? Since Allah was the only consciousness that exists, where did they rise up if they are outside of his consciousness? If they are outside of his consciousness, where did they just spring forth from? From nothing? That don't make sense, Abdul. Because if you're saying that it sprung forth from nothing, then you are saying that it is sustaining itself. Like the example I gave, a tree springs forth from the ground, Abdul. So where did this, all of these planets and stuff, what's sustaining it if it's outside of the consciousness of God, when consciousness is what allows you to be conscious of things? So what you are standing on, your position is that the things that we see, the planets and everything, they maintain themselves. Just like the noises you hear in the background. They don't maintain themselves. They are able to be heard because of the objects that are within creation that the sound waves bounce off of, thereby allowing those sound waves to enter into your ear canal so your brain can register the sounds. Everything is dependent upon creation to exist. It's dependent upon the consciousness to exist. You can't have one without the other, Abdul. So answer us these questions. Bring your best imam. Prove me wrong. Let's do this live on Skype, Abdul. Prove to us, show us an example of something existing outside of consciousness. Show us an example, Abdul. Look, I know that you can't do it. I'm so sure and confident that you can't do it. I will become a Muslim. I'll take the Shahada on your channel if you can prove that to us. If you can show us something existing outside of consciousness. Show us, demonstrate your example outside of our consciousness and your consciousness. Do it somewhere else outside of creation. Do that for us, Abdul. Can you show us that? That's the challenge to you. So with that, we have gotten this Muslim warrior busted, and hopefully he's going to step up to the plate or never respond to me again. This is how you get Muslims busted 101. Also, if you want to see other videos on my channel where we have totally annihilated and destroyed Islam, subscribe to the channel, share this channel with your friends. Look, people, these Abduls are no challenge. They are no competition. These Abduls have nothing to stand upon except screaming, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. That's all they have. Look at the Muslim nations. Look at the Muslim nations. They poor, they broke. They don't have anything. That's why, look at the picture. Only thing they have is a shoebox. You see all them ignorant people, they lost and blind, man. By some man who told them that he had a vision in a cave and The Muslim Abdul that you see behind you, he is a byproduct of the lies and deception of Muhammad. They believing something that a man said who was fearful, who thought he was demon possessed, who said that when he received the Quran, it sounded like a ringing. Let me show you. Let me show you. We want to show you how this don't make sense. Let me show you. Let me show you. Aisha reported that Hisham asked Allah's apostle, "How does the Wahi inspiration come to you?" He said, "At times it comes to me like the ringing of a bell, and that is most severe for me, and when it is over, I retain that what I have received in the form of Wahi, and at times an angel in the form of a human being comes to me and speaks, and I retain whatever I speak." So now, you see, his Muhammad said they believe that that Allah's word is written in